Good evening. Is it ready?
Yeah.
Oh,
False start. Let's try again.
oh I didn't know what this was.
I was like, now. Okay, back up. Nobody's here yet anyway. I'm sure everybody in replay will laugh at this.
All right, so we're ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important hour of your day. Hello, I'm Michael, and today's show is being mindful of or are you being mindful of the patterns in your life? But before we get started on that, let's introduce our host today. We've got Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Willow, our trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
I said welcome. How are you doing?
And if you are viewing live and have a question or a comment, feel free and we will try and answer them as expediently as possible.
Hang on, there is one more.
Matter of fact, another group member has just joined us, Tim, our executive analyst. Tim, are you there?
Hey, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I am here.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Just in time.
Just in time.
Excellent. So with that, I will turn it over to Willow. Willow, you are in charge at this point. Go for it.
So, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Raising Excellence for the second week of Trauma Uncovered. The concept that I want to explore this evening is mindful pattern recognition and why it may be a challenge for some survivors of trauma. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was a term that I picked up from The Body Keeps the Score. And let's see if I can pronounce this right. If Agnieszka will put the first slide or the picture up on the screen, that would be wonderful. And I'm also trying to find it. Okay, so it pronounces it. That's why I needed to find it because I'm not the best at pronouncing it. It's the alexithymia, and it is difficulty in expressing, experiencing, and describing emotional responses. And this is the most concise, but also it encompassed all of the different reactions to it because in the Greek etymology of the word, this word actually means a lack of word for emotion, which makes it very difficult to express or experience something that you don't have a word for. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. If anyone had any questions, that would be helpful.
I'm like, how do you even, like, I don't know. I don't have this issue. I have too many adjectives for my emotions, not enough. That's a different issue.
So Sam, it's a lack of emotions then, or lack
of the
being able
ability to describe. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense with the traumatized people. And one thing that helps is to like keep a list with definitions and then to try to match off how you're feeling during the day to the definitions of the feelings and the words. And that way you can kind of learn to be more descriptive and more subtle with your understanding of how you're feeling and how that's.
But it could be fear that's stopping people from describing their own emotions. Like if there was a negative, because I'm always going back to the traumatic event in your life. Well, what was your traumatic event? How did you deal with that? And so I find that if their trauma, their childhood trauma, whatever has to do with, don't talk like that. Don't tell me about, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear about your stupid feelings. Give me something concrete. Did you get an A? If you didn't get an A, don't talk to me until you get an A. That kind of conversation might actually stifle the ability to express the emotions. You may actually know what they are, but you don't want to talk about it because it's bad things happen when you talk about your emotions, right?
And eventually, especially if that happens in childhood, the brain doesn't want to follow that because if you're just doing something because someone else wants you to, your brain really won't allow you to focus all of your energy. It has to convince itself that this is the definition for what they're feeling, and then they eventually they don't express that feeling anymore because or they label it, they mislabel it. They'll be like, oh, I'm having this feeling, kind of similar to how I think on the last episode I was talking about shivering, or no, it was at our meeting about how sometimes my body will start to shake. And for the longest time, I used to say, I'm cold, even if I wasn't cold, but I didn't know how to describe it. I just assumed that my body was shaking because it was cold, because I had never had my body shaken. And once I realized that that was, I can't remember exactly what it was, what the exact symptom it was. Um, as soon as I had a word for it, it made it a lot easier for me to recognize that pattern. So I think, to be honest, I think this alexithymia, sorry, I always have to say it really slow. I think it's just the brain not allowing you to recognize a pattern that's going to cause you significant stress over and over and over again. So you don't have to constantly deal with it. You just kind of push it out, which that's why I was originally going to go into like disassociation and depersonalization, because they are other symptoms that challenge this area. But they're really in-depth topics that require their own episode, to be honest.
So that sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of men have a kind of a situation, especially manly men, in which they don't want to express any emotions or they're deterred from it. I mean, is that essentially the same kind of, would that be the same kind of description?
I could see it being very similar, especially since a lot of men, when they were young boys, they, the way that they were treated or told to express themselves, if they cried and that wasn't an emotion that was allowed, maybe they'd find that anger is really the response that gets, everyone's attention. So whenever they feel like crying, they get really angry.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to show someone that, hey, I feel really hurt and I'm crying, but in reality they're just showing anger because that's what they were taught. That could be, I think it really could be considered alexithymia, because you're mislabeling your emotion and you're not even acknowledging the one that you do have, or you can't express it. That's actually, it's not that you can't acknowledge it, but you can't express to someone else. You can't say, I am angry because I feel like crying. You just know that you're angry.
I find it super interesting, the perspective that you're bringing in, because I've had to do with patterns, and I learned a lot about patterns because that's really at the core of permaculture design. And I never really got it from the perspective of of the emotional side and of recognizing patterns from that point of view. And if you would look at pattern and pattern design like a little closer, then it's amazing, because everything that we experience, literally everything around us, is marked by patterns and is defined by pattern as well. And if I might share like a small segment from permaculture design, then maybe that will help to recognize and to design to recognize those patterns that we are surrounded by, and that really are that really bring together like a variety of disciplines and of sciences as well, and which are at the core of all of those. You mind me reading like a small passage?
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It says, patterns are familiar or recognizable, predictable, repeating, rhythmic, memorable forms. Patterns are visible as edges. Patterns are detectable by our senses and intuitively. Patterns reflect body-centered, holistic knowledge. Pattern recognition is fundamental to human ecologic success and the core of permaculture design. Pattern recognition is a linking discipline that applies equally to geography, biology, music, art, astronomy, physics, economics, physiology, technology, and so on and so forth. And maybe that helps to put pattern in perspective, because it's really there's patterns, for example, waves, spirals, the mushroom shape, if you imagine like the shape of a mushroom, grid patterns. So there's a variety of patterns that just repeat all over the place. And if you know how to spot them, then it's like it is hard not to recognize that there's a universal design that just repeats itself all over again. And you might see it in the shape of a tree. If you look at the shape of
But how does that work with our emotions and present itself on an emotional level?
So
yeah,
I
that is really amazing, because that's an additional aspect that I have not been like seeing before. So I'm really excited about what you have to share more, Willow.
Can you repeat the question again, Agnieszka? Because I was like, yes, I agree with everything that Dennis
How
is saying,
does
and my
it
mind was like,
show up in the emotional aspect? So okay, so there's a pattern I've noticed, and I've noticed this in my friends and in myself as well. So usually, like what you work with, Willow, is sustained trauma, right? But a lot of people that I work with have like a specific traumatic event that sort of colors their life, right? And so whenever that person later, like, as an adult, that person gets stressed or pressured or like goes into like a bit of panic, they'll start acting the age that the traumatic event happened at, right? So if the traumatic event happened at the age of 4 or 5, the word choice that they use and sort of the reaction type will be from that kind of age, 4 or 5, right? I was talking to a friend the other day about this concept, and he's a very playful guy, and I don't think he's really dealt with his traumatic event, and he's a very like, yeah, we just play, don't do our homework, yay, let's just whatever, drink every day. And I'm like, so I'm just curious, when did your traumatic event happen? And it happened at 8. And so that's perfect for an 8-year-old boy to just want to play and not want to study and not want to do homework and not want to be responsible, or just responsible enough to get away with it. You know what I mean? So that's very interesting, those type of patterns.
I think the way it ties in with your emotions is when you, and this is why I started out with the alexithymia, what happens when children can't express what they're saying or what they're feeling. Children are, and they don't have alexithymia.
Do you have
They're
two
just children.
feeds going somehow? Because there's a bit of an echo, like you're talking twice.
I shouldn't be. I can hear it.
Can you?
Yeah, I can
you
hear
can
the
hear
echo.
it, then it's real, then it's not in my imagination. Because I thought maybe I'm just, going a little crazy, but no, maybe not.
I don't think so. Maybe it's just.
I'm not hearing it over here, so I don't
All
know.
right, keep
Oh,
going.
I am hearing it actually, and
Okay.
as well. So, but it's kind of light.
It's light. It's feedback light.
Now I'm hearing it on everybody's.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder if it's because I was messing with OBS earlier and
Is
maybe
it turned off?
You cursed yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
it should be.
Kelly, is it bad? Can you tell us?
Hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, okay, keep going.
Okay. So I was going to say, the way I think it ties in with the emotions is when you have a child who can't express why they're upset or what they're feeling, a lot of times their body will produce a series of patterns of behavior to get your attention. And I think that's what happens with your patterns. So the things that you're interested in, the things that you're drawn to, and we can go ahead and put the themes picture up, because these are all the themes that I like to focus on. These are things that you're going to find yourself drawn to or repulsed by. You have a pattern of having a reaction to these things, whether it be good or negative. And a lot of people don't stop to think about the patterns that are in their dreams, the sensations that they feel, the feelings that they're feeling, if they even have a correct label for the feelings. Symbols was one for me. Different symbols would start, I would notice them and be like, what does that mean? And I'd have to do a lot of research. Same with colors and numbers. Now, colors I have found very, more so than any other one, very closely tied to emotional states. And it's color therapy is one of the things that I suggest, which we'll touch on that in, I think, the 3rd episode of this week, about how to arrange your environment to express yourself with, with what information you get from these themes.
Nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. The colors, I know when it comes to like the logo design and stuff like that, colors are attached to archetypes as well. And so that whole thing,
And
I don't know much
symbolism.
about it, but maybe somebody else can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't
That's
call
something-
it seeing red for nothing.
Yeah, actually, that ties in with the alexithymia, where a lot of times we will misuse phrases like that. I was trying to say the other day to Kurt, I was like, it feels like there's a pit in my stomach, but my stomach is sinking, and I was saying it all wrong, and he was like, I don't understand what you're trying to say, and I was like making the motion, and he goes, you have a pit in your stomach, and it feels like your stomach is dropping, right? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm feeling, but I was describing it. I couldn't find the words to describe. I was just doing this motion. I'm like, it feels like there's something here and it's moving, because I didn't have the words. But a lot of people don't know how to, they'll reflexively be like, oh yeah, I had a wall of anger and I was seeing red. And, like they will say these patterns out loud, but they won't recognize that every time they're very frustrated about the same thing, they see red or they feel the wall of anger. They're not associating these feelings with themselves.
Yeah, like when I feel depressed, I feel like there's a wall of black protecting or preventing me from using my brain. That's what I've described it as before. And I need to get through the wall. But that could be also a amygdala hijack too, like a sustained one.
It's really strange because I've never been injected with morphine. I have not had it in like the hospital setting where they actually inject it into your veins. But when someone talks about like depression, my first reaction is like slipping into like a medical induced coma where you're just like, I'm going to sleep right now, and just like slowly drift off. Like it's a weird, I can
It's
feel
not
the
slow.
sensation.
I've had morphine in a hospital setting before, and it's not slow. Basically, the anesthesiologist says, keep your eyes open, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. You don't know what happens. Apparently he counts to 10, but I only heard 4, and that's happened twice. So it's not slow. It's like, keep your eye.
So I saw them. I saw when my feet hit the doors to the operating room, and then that was it. I couldn't see anymore. I was done with the morphine.
I was giving instructions to my surgeon. Just remember, do it this way. And then
That sounds like you.
You mentioned numbers. What's an example of like a number? Like, is there a particular number, like my birthday number, and that like being something, or maybe the date, or what?
So I have like a half answer for you because I haven't fully answered the question for myself. I have a set of numbers that I periodically see, and I don't know why my brain, as soon as like it flicks onto the laptop computer or my phone, my brain wants to look and check the time, and it'll be at 123 or 9/11. And the 9/11 number started happening after 9/11, and I thought it was really weird. I never had that problem until I realized one day that I was looking at the clock and I was like, oh, that says 9/11. That's a really important day. And now all of a sudden, I don't know what my mind associates that with, other than obviously, 9/11. But when you're talking about this, it's never, ever that closely related. It's not like, oh yeah, I see the number 9/11 and it happened on this thing happened on 9/11 and it scarred everybody, and that's exactly what the issue is. No, it's never a clear association with symbology like that.
I remember I used to see like 444 on trucks and stuff, or 111.
And there's a whole
one of our resident numerologists in gematria. We should get one of them on.
Doesn't Nathan Lee Miller Foster? Doesn't he get into numerology? Because I think he's the person I texted, and I was like, hey, do you happen to know any symbology or behind the numbers 9/11 or 123? and I actually looked up the symbology of the 9, the 1, and the 1, and I can't recall what it meant or said, but I remember being like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It was like some sort of warning, like my brain would warn me of something, and I still haven't figured out what, why exactly
Well,
I am drawn.
911 would be warning. Right?
Oh yeah, true. And see, my conscious brain didn't even remember or recall that 911 is the emergency number.
Yeah. But I do have a book of Dan Millman's numerology. We can look up those numbers later if you want.
That would be really cool, because I've been wanting some answers about that. But also, numbers that you're kind of drawn to. Like, for some reason, I have been drawn to a specific set of 4 numbers, and I won't say because they're important to me, so I use them in my day-to-day life, and no one else needs to know them.
Are they your lottery numbers?
No. I don't play the lottery because that's taken almost exclusively out of taxes, and it's also a gambling. Not necessarily that gambling itself is bad, but it is an addictive thing, and I don't think that the state should be offering yet another addictive substance for people to get hooked on, especially at their own cost when they're the ones paying for it in the first place.
The odds are not in your favor, by the way.
No.
But all you can do is not help people with something, right? So, like, I can't stop. Like, the same thought about gambling came through my mind when some guy asked me to help him with marketing. This was a couple years ago, and he said he targets people who are already addicted to poker to play more online poker. And I ran it through my moral first filter, and I was like, I can't write your emails for you, buddy. It's not right. That's not right. You don't get people who are already addicted to something and try to get them more addicted to it. That's not good. But I was chicken. I didn't tell him that I didn't want to work with him for moral reasons. So I told him I had too busy or too much on my plate.
Yeah, we've all done that, at least once or twice in our life.
When you mention numbers and patterns to me, then one of the first things that comes to my mind is the Fibonacci sequence, and if you think of the snail, like of a snail house, or of the pattern of the spiral, then that would be a great example of highlighting how everything seems to have numbers at its base and at its core, and that the entire universe is really so there's patterns that that surround us in everywhere we look. And the Fibonacci sequence, of course, is the adding together the 2 previous numbers. So if you're starting from 0 from 1, then you have 1 and 2 is 3, then you have 2 and 3 is 5, then you have 3 and 5 is 8, and so on. And if you look at the pattern of a snail house, for example, that is that's somewhere where you can recognize I guess you would have to see it visually, but you can easily look it up. That would be a great example of seeing how there is a system, or how there is a pattern that even in the smallest of things you can see it, and it infinitely extends, and it seems to be applicable to everything that surrounds us. I think that was something to me that's like, wow, now I'm really getting excited about math, but like the kind of mathematics that they tried to teach me in school, it never made sense, but now it starts to make sense if I look at it from that perspective. I'm
actually really glad that you brought that up, because I have always been into rocks. I love rocks, crystals. I was the kid who my stepmom at the time actually was like, please do not buy her rock candy. We already have trouble with her, carrying rocks around, and we don't need her putting them in her mouth. Please don't confuse her anymore. Like, my parents would hide rocks. They'd kick them out of my way so that I wouldn't see them and pick them up and carry them home. But of course, when I was going through my really unstable, Agnieszka remembers this time because I was texting her nonstop, like every day. I'm like, am I crazy? That phase. I started going to I don't even know what you call it. In my mind, I call it the witchy store with the crystals. But it's one of those like alternative
metaphysical shops.
Metaphysical shops.
Nice.
And I was drawn to this. It's not a stone or a crystal, it's a fossil, and it is the Fibonacci sequence. And when I look at what it's supposed to represent, it said, and I went in there 3 or 4 times and I picked it up and I held it in my hand, and like I kept holding it and I couldn't let it go. I was like, I am drawn to this. For some reason, I want this in my life. And I looked it up and it said, the one thing I can remember is it was a reminder of your primal and basic instincts to survive. And that was what I was having trouble with at the time, because a lot of trauma, when you go into freeze or fawn, you can be very compliant or go along with, you make choices that you wouldn't normally make under, not threatening circumstances. And it can be really shameful. It can feel really shameful that you basically brought yourself down to that level to be able to survive. And that thing actually, like, being drawn to that drew me to the precise bit of information that I needed that my brain needed to accept what had happened, that no matter what happened, any response that I had in that moment was strictly to survive. And that brings me comfort. It brings me comfort that my body and my brain are built to survive, and there is no shame in anything that had to be done to get there. The shame comes in afterwards, when you have the choice to change and you do or do not decide. That's where shame, I think, may be applicable, if shame is ever even applicable. But yeah, this is how I think these patterns are really indicative of what emotional state you're in. Not necessarily what emotional state you're in at the time, but it will point you in the right direction of where you need to go much more accurately, I think, than any of my doctors have ever been. I've learned so much more information about my own body and my brain and the way I work than any doctor has ever been able to tell me.
Why would you even give up your own, like, control over your own healing to someone else? How could they possibly know? They don't have your moral, your values, your emotions. They might have some data, and you can take that data from them and incorporate it into your own healing plan. But your healing plan needs to be yours.
But when you have been in and out of a doctor's office since you were 7 years old, and everyone in your life has been telling you that there is something wrong with you, you believe them, because you don't have the wherewithal to not believe them. You have to trust your caretaker. You have to make that bond.
Yeah, but you believe them only until you develop your own inner parenting system and you no longer count on them as parents, right? So that could happen at 20 or at 40, right? We don't know. It's already happened for you. You've already taken over you've become in charge. But so many people, when they grow to the 18, they sort of give up their sovereignty to the government, to the doctors, to the lawyers, to the whatever, labor board, whatever. They give it up to somebody. They don't actually maintain their sovereignty, their control over their own life.
So basically, recognize patterns in order to
free yourself.
Free yourself, step into your self-responsibility and recognize your true nature.
And become a good parent.
Mike had to say something.
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and this relates to kind of numbers, is, the 7 liberal arts. The first 3 are the trivium. The next 4 are called the quadrivium. And it's arithmetic, geometry, I think music, and then astronomy. And that is number itself, number in space, number in time, number in space and time. So, I mean, and that's the basis for, freedom. And I think that describes learning. And that is essentially patterns. Those are all patterns.
And sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
That was it.
I was going to say that pattern recognition is one of the first centers that goes offline when you're triggered. And by triggered, I mean like triggered in a flashback, an episode with all these emotions. And that's why this is just such a good exercise of getting up and saying, like, personally, I've had a stream of dreams that have just been nonstop, constant. And a lot of them are reoccurring dreams, I'm starting to realize. And because I'm dreaming for so long, I'm starting to realize what part of the world in my dream world I'm in. I'm starting to map out my dream world. And I'm starting to recognize sensations and colors. And then when I wake up, this is translating into my day-to-day life. Like, if I'm feeling really, really insecure, I will make something red for dinner. And I always thought it was because, I make jambalaya because that's what my mama used to make. I'm making jambalaya because it's got a lot of cayenne pepper and that shit is red. I will eat tomatoes even though I'm allergic to them. I will crave red things. I will want to be around red colors. And that kind of ties into like the root chakra and the colors of the chakras. And the best advice I can give is if you find a pattern, I would research and write into an internet search. What is the symbolic meaning of this? And look at everything, not just one. Don't stop at one because that first one may not tell you. It may not be anything related to you. You're going to find one that's like, oh yeah, this, I think it has some weight and you can make changes in your life that you never even imagined could change your outlook.
So what you're saying that we have an inner knowing, that even though the internet has all the options, we will know what option actually applies to us?
It'll resonate with you. Even if you're like, hey, you know what? All these people are just bullshitters. They don't know what they're talking about. Someone's going to say something and you're going to be like, but wait a second. I might actually have an issue with that. Maybe that is how I feel. And maybe that's why I couldn't explain it before. And I've never made any progress on it.
Well, it takes a big man to admit that they've never made any progress on something or anything. Or big woman, whatever. You know what I mean?
So, Sam, once you recognize these patterns, or they may be negative or they may be positive, but maybe they don't serve you anymore, how do you go about changing them or changing their direction to better serve you?
So my exercise is basically to put all of it in its place, which by that I mean on a page in a journal. So journaling, more journaling. That is...
I love journaling.
Your brain is not wired to hold all that information at once. It'll try and act on all these things. So if you have all these sensations, these leftover dream memories, these feelings, you're drawn to symbols and colors and numbers, it's hard to focus on anything except that. So what I do is I took this from the Crappy Childhood Fairy, which if anybody's interested in healing trauma, you should definitely check her out. She is wonderful.
Should we share a link to the Crappy Childhood Fairy today? We haven't shared it yet.
Yeah,
Can you guys provide the links? At the end of the show, provide me the links and I'll put them in.
Yeah. So I believe, because I have not signed up for her paid content, so I've never actually gotten to see her do her daily practice, but she has gone into some detail about one aspect of it, and that is her daily, or I call it the daily negativity dump. And it's where she writes out all of her resentments and fears. And the way she does this, and actually we can go ahead and announce the exercise with the lovely little picture that I have.
Sam, for some of us, that might take all day.
Well, it's meant to be not a timed exercise, but I guess it would be a timed.
Is it the dump fear thing? Is that what I'm showing? Okay, I'm showing it. Ta-da!
So this is the exercise that I'm going to have y'all do, and I've actually been trying to do this as well.
Wait. It says daily.
Yeah.
It says dump your fear and resentment daily. That's what it says.
Yeah.
But that means I have to do something daily.
So imagine that wherever you're dumping this out of is like a purse. And if you have a purse and it's a really small purse, you can only fit so much in there. And you want to keep some of that stuff, but you don't want to carry it around with you, right? You want to understand it. You want to figure it out. Maybe it's got some old movie tickets from your best friends. You want to remember it. You put all of that out on paper. What I do is I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, I have my moment of silence, and then I sit down and I start writing. And I use the prompt, I use the 2 prompts. I fear ... And then, of course, write down whatever trivial or severe fear I have. And actually, I've said this, I don't know if I've said it on live, but my first entry doing this, I could not write anything. Sat there for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, I was like, I fear that someone is going to read this and use my words against me. Like, I don't feel safe saying it out loud and having a record of it. That makes me feel very scared. And I had to put in some modifiers that I was like, and there's no one around me that would ever do this, and I don't understand why I feel this way, but it was there. And as soon as I wrote that, everything else just kind of fell out of the bag.
But that sounds like when you were a child and you had your traumatic event, that's what happened. People didn't respect your privacy.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, but that's what you shouldn't do, actually. You don't delve into this. This isn't a pulling out your bag and going through everything and inspecting it. This is dumping your bag into another place. No. Don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
Instead, write it down every day.
Yeah.
I'm imagining my wife's purse. It's kind of like a clown car. Stuff just keeps coming out and coming out and coming out.
But if you ever need anything, like a Band-Aid, it's like, boom, it's right there.
No, if I have to go in there and find my keys or anything, it's impossible. I have to give it to her and tell her to find it. It's just impossible.
How long do you look before you find them? Or before you... How long do you give up? Or until you give up? Yeah, that's it.
Pretty quick. But no, that makes sense, Sam, to dump it all out on the table and then kind of wash it off and come back another day.
Exactly. Because, I mean, we all have emptied our bag into another bowl and then been like, I will deal with that later. And that's basically what you're doing with your brain. You're waking up in the morning, or even, it can be whenever you feel comfortable, whenever you feel like the bag is full and you're like, all right, I need to dump some of this out. I need to empty it. Go find a piece of paper, put it there. And if all you do, if you can't remember any of your dreams, if you can't remember your sensations or feelings or symbols, numbers, colors, any of that, that's fine. Write down, I fear, and then answer that question. And then write down, I fear that I resent, and then answer that question.
I fear that writing daily is going to steal my soul. I feel that I resent doing anything every day.
Write that. Write exactly that. Like, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And there's been days where I've sat there and I'm like, I can't tell if I fear anything. I fear that I don't have anything to fear today. I resent that I don't have anything to fear today because I don't have anything to write. It can be a list of trivial, and with, you're going to have some stuff in there that you're going to be like, whoa, I didn't know that was in there. Don't stop to look at it. Don't do it.
Don't rub it on yourself.
It's here. This is the whole point, is it's out of your mind and it's in a physical space. Now, if I put this over here and you can't see it, does that mean it doesn't exist? It's right there. See?
It's gone.
Right
forever.
No. But that's the point, is I used to do this, and I'd explain to my husband all the time. He was like, why do you keep so much stuff? And I said, because when I go back to that stuff, I can say, man, I remember my friend Maddie, she gave me this. She won it. And she knew that I had trouble smoking. And, this is like my favorite vape. And maybe if it breaks, I kind of want to keep it because it's got a memory attached to it. And Kurt didn't understand. He was like, your memories are here. What are you doing? Your memories are here. I'm like, no, they're not, because I can't access them. My brain doesn't want me to access everything at once like everyone else's brain, because it's hiding stuff for a reason. It can still hide, but I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to keep track of it hiding because it's safe with me. And you kind of develop a safe place to allow these things to come out. And I think that's one of the core issues with alexithymia, is it's not safe to show these things yet. So your brain will not allow you to.
Yeah, I think this is it really is kind of developing a habit or a daily practice that I think could be useful, because as you develop this, it's probably going to become almost automatic. And when you run up against something that you do fear, then this is going to be kind of the logical process that you've already created for yourself to hash through it and figure out what's valuable and what isn't. So this is very, very useful.
Now, by the way, since there's a bit of a lull in the conversation, I just want to say thank you to Kelly and Adam for checking on our sound issues. I did give you guys a thumbs up, but I just wanted to acknowledge verbally in case you didn't know or notice that I did that. Thank you.
Yes, we really appreciate any word from the audience about how we're doing. Word. I'm a 90s kid. I can do that.
I'm not. I can still do it. I can do whatever I want. I can do everything. Speaking of emotional dumps, you know what helped me this weekend? Paddleboarding. Being on the water, especially on a lake, and it was so like crystal calm in places, and just the floating like smooth. It was just so good. So good.
Wasn't that illegal?
No?
Is that illegal in It's illegal for most people, unfortunately.
No, we're just supposed to keep our distance, and we did. I went with friends, but we weren't like this. We were like this. It was still good. I liked it.
So, do you all walk or meditate?
I have a dog.
So
I
you
have
walk.
found that on days when I do not do this daily dump, I have trouble doing those things. I have trouble sitting and meditating. I have trouble stretching and moving my body because all those emotions that wanted to come out when I was writing on paper, they do come out when I'm moving my body, and it freaks me out. My whole mentality. You can just see my whole body language. I'm just like,
we've talked about this before. I don't know if on this show, I think so, but how we hold all this tension inside our fascia. And actually, I was thinking about doing another week in the future about psychosomatic therapy and like going deeper with some guest speakers who are excellent at psychosomatic therapy, going deeper to what difference it actually makes. But when your fascia, so fascia is the white film between the muscles and the tendons, it sort of wraps along the tendons and the muscles and stuff. And a lot of the time when there's tension in that layer, it causes tension in the muscles. And people are like, oh, my muscles are sore. But when it's emotional based, it's often the fascia that's really tight. So there are stretches and stuff. But also people say that's where our negative emotions are held back, right? So when I experience something negative and I may not want to deal with it and I don't want to let it go, I want to keep it, but I don't want to deal with it properly, right? I stick it somewhere in my body, put a layer of fat over it. And so I have this tense spot with tense underneath the big layer of fat. And so then exercises, even like the paddling this weekend, actually allowed me to move some of that emotional stuff and release some of that stored tension.
There are those rolls, I think they're called, I'm not sure what the name in English, the proper name is, but the direct translation from German would be like fascia rolls. They became hip, I think. Like
for rolling on like balls and things for rolling your body on. That releases the tension. Yeah.
What's that therapy rolfing, or is that it?
But they don't call it fascia rolls in North America. I don't know why. But
those are like super simple and super low cost, and they have a tremendous effect. Like not only like from a training point of view, but you were hinting at it, like from releasing stored emotions and that manifest in the physical as well. And sometimes or even like during hatha yoga, during the physical the more physical part of yoga, it's something that one can recognize like frequently, how like a position or a posture actually releases not only physical tension, but how like certain emotions will come up. And like there's specific things where men usually like have problems, or like areas of the body, or for women as well. And then if you go into those postures and you hold them and you go deep within, not only on a physical level, but it's also like on an emotional level. And then you like after that there's a feeling of, at least for me, oftentimes it is, there's like you're walking on clouds, or there's like, wow, it's not just physically like relaxed, but it's something that goes way beyond that. And it just shows like how it's all connected again, how our physicality is connected to our emotional being, to our mental being, to our intellectual, also to our spiritual being.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually have to cost you anything. You can just take a rolling pin, wrap it in like a little hand towel with two elastics, and then lay it on the ground and just roll whatever part of your body you want on that rolling pin. Or for point, you can use a tennis ball and just roll around whichever part, like your shoulders, your whatever part of your body you need. The point would be to put the thing that you roll on the floor and then roll on top of it, using your weight as a pressure.
So that reminds me of the beginning of my issues. I was doing yoga quite a bit, and they had us do an exercise where basically, I say like you sit like a guy where you have your, one leg at like the 4 position,
Yeah,
up over
that's a
the
power
other leg.
pose. Yeah,
Indian style.
Half Indian style. So one leg is straightened and the other is crossed like a 4 position overwards.
in psychosomatic therapy, it's called like 4 position.
What they had us do was they have us put a tennis ball underneath our butt cheek, so on our sciatic nerve, and then you put your leg up like that and you roll around on it. And I remember doing it, and they said, this is a pretty aggressive method to try and get sciatic pain to go away. And I was like, I've never had sciatic pain, and I did it and it hurt for a second, and I was like, oh, but that's a good hurt. And ever since then, it was like I have had sciatic pain. I never realized how much tension I actually kept there because my brain and my body had numbed me of it. And now, like, that prompted me, after feeling the pain in my hips and like all of this going on, it prompted me to go to a physical therapist.
Nice. Hey, you know what? Before we close, like, I know we're getting close to the end and we still have to do the journaling, and I know you already talked about it a little bit, but I just wanted to do like a 2-minute insert segment here.
Yeah, I'm
allergies.
I'm done actually. So
okay,
Ooh,
so because I wanted to specifically for Dennis, because I see Dennis with his swollen eyes, and I know it's 1 o'clock in the morning, but I know that the reason you look like this is not because you're sleepy, it's because you get nasty allergies going on. So there are a few things that you can try for your allergies, and this goes for everybody. Allergy season is high right now in a lot of places, and we're not supposed to cough in public. So how do we survive the allergy season without coughing in public? This is crazy, right? So the one thing that we use at home is we use kombucha a lot. So kombucha administered 10-15 minutes before going outside. Just drink a big glass of kombucha. Makes our allergies go away for an hour or 2. So it's enough to go for a walk to the park or whatever. Sorry, I will read that in a minute. I just had to laugh. So the second thing for allergies is nettle leaf. So you can actually use gloves, harvest nettle in the forest. Willow was just telling me just before the episode that the red dead nettle. Dead
nettle, but it's purple dead nettle.
Purple dead nettle, that's what it was. Purple dead nettle is actually just as good as for allergies as regular nettle, and it's grows everywhere. And in BC here, it's an invasive weed, so it's everywhere. It's also good for salads. It does not sting, and the tea or a soup made with those leaves will cause your allergy symptoms to release.
Be forewarned, if you drink too much or too excessive amounts of it, it can be a natural diuretic.
Yeah, but a little bit extra pee or slightly looser stool is nothing in comparison to coughing and sneezing all day long, or having swollen eyes like Della's.
I've heard it can give you the runs, just to be prepared. Not that that's a bad thing, but you really don't want to be like, I'm going to go on a walk and I'm going to drink this tea and then go on a walk.
I don't think it's going to give you those kind of runs, Maybe just when your time comes, it'll be a little bit less stable.
But when people are like, they're presented with an option, I've done this before where it's like, I'm going to drink a whole bunch of this because, I'm going to super dose a body and, get a super immune system, and then you end up sick.
Well, once you get used to it, I think there's a certain tolerance level. When you're not used to nettle, I can drink a liter of nettle. It doesn't do anything to me. Although, like I said, I err in the kombucha. I usually use the kombucha. Now, there's another thing that I use that is really, really good for allergies, and that's it's those little homeopathic pilules, and it's histaminum, the histaminum pilules, and I use them when I'm having an allergic reaction to something, and it works like a charm for me. So those are the things we use around our house, and those are inexpensive, and nettle tea can be gotten in most stores. You can just drink it throughout the day to relieve your allergies. Works really well.
Well, you can also sweeten that tea with some local honey.
Yep,
Yes,
Local
local
that's
honey is
honey.
best.
also an excellent kind of immunization, a natural immunization for like local pollen and so forth.
Why is that? Do you remember?
I think it is because the bees use that pollen to like build their their honey and their hive or whatever, and so I think there's some natural antibodies in there.
It's similar.
Something I don't know.
It's helped along by dandelions. So I don't know if you've ever picked up a dandelion and smelled it. The inside of it smells almost exactly like honey because it's the primary ingredient used in honey. It's because of that pollen that you get the inoculation, but honey in general does have high antibacterial properties. Manuka honey is the best for that, for if you want the antibacterial properties.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
the
why I
local
say
fat honey
local
for the
though,
pollen. Yeah.
because it is like a concoction of whatever the local vegetation is. And then of course the other thing is that most of the honey these days that you get from the grocery store and stuff is not really honey at all.
Yeah, it's pasteurized or something, so you have to be careful to get natural honey.
Yeah.
Or just go pick some dandelions from your backyard.
You can do that too. That works too.
With that, we have 1 minute left. Did anyone have any parting words?
No, we have a whole segment to do, the journaling segment.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
I think we kind of covered the journaling with Willow's thing, so I'm okay with not doing a journaling thing in particular on this one because we talked about journaling.
I had a question that might be fitting, which is there any patterns that you can share that have helped you with your journaling? Like I know we like touched upon a few of them, but maybe it's fitting like in the context of this show, like if we to help people to maybe adopt some patterns that will help you on your journaling journey and might make it easier, to adapt to that on a regular basis. Is there anything that worked for you, or what would have been the one thing that made it easier to do it on an ongoing basis for you?
To be honest, the resentments and fears was the biggest thing that helped. And that helped me because it helped me focus on sensations. So I'd have a weird sensation waking up, and I didn't before recognize that I was dysregulated. It just felt normal to me. I just felt a little off, a little tired. And people ask me this. Kurt's asked me this numerous times when I wake up, and he's like, "Are you okay? How you feeling?" And all I can say, this is the pattern that I recognize. All I can say is, "I feel fine." I mean, and that changed into not really feeling much of anything, but my face would be looking something along like this, where it's like, I am not okay. I'm not happy. I'm not in a good mood. I don't feel well, but I can't tell. And I just say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. And so those two phrases whenever I started writing them down or hearing myself say them, I would realize that I need to go write this down. I need to go write, I'm feeling okay. I'm not really feeling much of anything. I might be dysregulated right now. That was one of the biggest things that helped. And colors, paying attention to colors.
What would you say to a child who didn't know, who had the grumpy face but said they were fine? How would you deal with that? Not necessarily for now, but just the thought.
Coloring.
Yeah, that. I also ask questions. I don't ask, are you feeling okay? Or how are you feeling? I say, what are you feeling? Where do you feel it?
Nice.
Because that will help them. A lot of times they'll say, I feel it here, my tummy hurts. And you're like, okay, maybe are you anxious? Are you upset about something? Or they'll be like, it hurts here. And be like, okay, is there something you're having a problem with, you're struggling with, that you haven't found an answer? It gives you a little bit of a clue as to what's going on. Relating it back to bodily experiences is really, really important, because that's what you can't do when you have alexithymia. You can't relate what you're feeling back to a bodily experience, and you can't explain it. You don't know how to explain it, or when you do explain it, it just comes out wrong and no one understands you.
Yeah.
I had one other thing there, and actually for the autonomy students that were in the Q&A thing this week, you saw that, but Richard was talking about how he kind of outlines his ideas through 3x5 cards. And, not everybody has to, like, not everybody does the journaling the same way, but for him, he jots down these ideas on these little index cards. Then then it's almost like a card game for him at some point, either during the day or once a week, where he kind of reviews those cards and puts them in different piles. And in a lot of ways, that can be a way to kind of and Richard is great at this, and his brain model is also great for this, is kind of segmenting the information that's coming in from your mind and your feelings into those categories that are much more useful, and possibly could be collected together into maybe a project or something like that you can then work on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, by the way, I just realized that I never read to you guys what one of the listeners said earlier that made me smile. And it was Mr. Tyler. And he was questioning our masonry. He said two of our hosts have masonry next to them, and one of them has numbers. So, is that because we're Freemasons? So, the people in question, please address it.
I mean, I'm assuming they're talking about, maybe I'm hesitant to talk now because I'm like, wait, I don't understand what the question was. So I know that I'm
Masonry
gonna
means
ask
bricks.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I was like, there's only two people here who have bricks, and only one of them has numbers.
That's right. That's exactly what I've been told.
Okay.
Yes.
And mine are not even
Go
real
for it.
bricks. It's just like how you call it, a wallpaper.
Wallpaper. Okay. So he's just pretending to be a mason. What about
Just
you,
a pretend
Mr.
mason.
Tim?
It's a facade, like many a facade.
It's a facade. No, we're not Freemasons. It's just a facade.
On the house. Yeah.
I had one last thing to add. It's actually the ending of a story that I started earlier about numbers, because I think Dennis was asking about what patterns I've experienced. All of a sudden, one day, I had a desire to change my password. I couldn't stick with the same one anymore. It freaked me out. I had to change it. So I just thought, what am I going to use? I can't use a birthday. I can't use anything that can be identifiable or someone's going to know. It has to be in my mind. And that's why I didn't tell you guys what those numbers were. But I picked out these numbers, and I even looked at an old phone number because I thought maybe they came from an old phone number, and they didn't. But then I saw the same four numbers rearranged in a different position, and they were on one of our best friends' houses. It was his address, and I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, these are the same numbers that I chose, that I, for some reason, I had to go and look up the symbology of all four numbers. And it was really fascinating. It was like having a tarot reader read me my fortune, and I'm like, how did you know that?
Wonderful.
Nice.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and close this out. I think this was, again, a really insightful show, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show because we already kind of entered into
Not tomorrow.
what we're gonna talk
The
about
day after
or,
tomorrow.
Wednesday, I'm sorry, which is the title for Wednesday's show is being aware of your. Now I blew it.
You're
Guiding
so
your
Guiding your way
way.
toward body awareness, and
Oh.
so talking about all these things, that how these emotions fit into your body and so forth. So I think if you liked what we talked about today, you're really going to like that kind of stuff. But I want to remind everybody, we do have a website. It's called raisingexcellence.live. And on that, you can find more information about all of us and find out little things that we've got going for each of us, as well as how to connect with our YouTube, our Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook. And also, we're on 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. With that, thank you so much for your time and attention. We really appreciate it, and hope this was useful to you.
And now I'm going to play the outro while we all say goodbye.
Happy 420, everybody.
Bye. We love you.
Bye-bye.
More.
Bye bye.
Oops, I have to stop.
More